But do you know what, reader? In case you decide, despite this warning, to risk continuing to familiarise yourself with my further writings, and you try to absorb them always with an impulse of impartiality, and to understand the very essence of the questions I have decided to elucidate, and in view also of the particularity inherent in the human psyche, that there can be no opposition to the perception of good only exclusively when, so to say, a contact of mutual frankness and confidence is established, I now still wish to make a sincere confession to you about the associations arisen within me, which as a result have precipitated in the corresponding sphere of my consciousness the data which have prompted the whole of my individuality to select as the chief hero for my writings just such an individual as is presented before your inner eyes by this same Mr. Beelzebub. This I did, not without cunning. My cunning lies simply in the logical supposition that if I show him this attention, he infallibly, as I already cannot doubt any more, has to show himself grateful and help me by all means in his command in my intended writings. Although Mr. Beelzebub is made, as is said, of a different grain, yet since he also can think, and, what is most important, has, as I long ago learned thanks to the treatise of the famous Catholic monk Brother Foulon, a curly tail, then I, being thoroughly convinced from experience that curls are never natural, but can be obtained only from various intentional manipulations, conclude, according to the sane logic of hieromancy, formed in my consciousness from reading books, that Mr. Beelzebub also must possess a good share of vanity, and will therefore find it extremely inconvenient not to help one who is going to advertise his name. It is not for nothing that our renowned and incomparable teacher, Mullah Nasr ad-Din, frequently says, "Without greasing the palm, not only is it impossible to live anywhere tolerably, but even to breathe." And another also terrestrial sage, who has become such, thanks to the crass stupidity of people, named Till Eulenspiegel, has expressed the same in the following words: "If you don't grease the wheels, the cart won't go." Knowing these and many other sayings of popular wisdom formed by centuries in the collective life of people, I have decided to grease the palm precisely of Mr. Beelzebub, who, as everyone understands, has possibilities and knowledge enough and to spare for everything. Enough, old fellow. All joking, even philosophical joking aside, you, it seems, thanks to all these deviations, have transgressed one of the chief principles elaborated in you and put in the basis of a system planned previously for introducing your dreams into life by means of such a new profession, which principle consists in this: always to remember and take into account the fact of the weakening of the functioning of the mentation of the contemporary reader, and not to fatigue him with the perception of numerous ideas over a short time. Moreover, when I asked one of the people always around me who are eager to enter paradise without fail with their boots on, to read aloud straight through all that I have written in this introductory chapter, what is called my eye, of course with the participation of all the definite data formed in my original psyche during my past years, which data gave me, among other things, understanding of the psyche of creatures of different type but similar to me, constated and cognized with certainty that in the entirety of every reader, without exception, there must inevitably, thanks to this first chapter alone, arise as something, automatically engendering definite unfriendliness towards me personally. To tell the truth, it is not this which is now chiefly worrying me, but the fact that at the end of this reading, I also constated that in the sum total of everything expounded in this chapter, the whole of my entirety, in which the aforesaid I plays a very small part, manifested itself quite contrary to one of the fundamental commandments of that all-common teacher, whom I particularly esteem, Mullah Nasr ad-Din, and which he formulated in the words, "Never poke your stick into a hornet's nest." The agitation which pervaded the whole system affecting my feelings, and which resulted from cognizing that in the reader there must necessarily arise an unfriendly feeling towards me, at once quieted down as soon as I remembered the ancient Russian proverb which states, "There is no offence which with time will not blow over." But the agitation which arose in my system from realizing my negligence in obeying the commandment of Mullah Nasr ad-Din not only now seriously troubles me, but a very strange process which began in both of my recently discovered souls, and which assumed the form of an unusual itching immediately I understood this, began progressively to increase until it now evokes and produces an almost intolerable pain in the region a little below the right half of my already, without this, over-exercised solar plexus. Wait! This process, it seems, is also ceasing, and in all the depths of my consciousness, and let us meanwhile say, even beneath my subconsciousness, there already begins to arise everything requisite for the complete assurance that it will entirely cease, because I have remembered another fragment of life wisdom, the thought of which led my mentation to the reflection that if I indeed acted against the advice of the highly esteemed Mullah Nasr ad-Din, I nevertheless acted without premeditation, according to the principle of that extremely sympathetic, not so well known everywhere on earth, but never forgotten by all who have once met him, that precious jewel, Carapet of Tiflis. It can't be helped. Now that this introductory chapter of mine has turned out to be so long, it will not matter if I lengthen it a little more to tell you also about this extremely sympathetic Carapet of Tiflis. First of all, I must state that 20 or 25 years ago, the Tiflis railway station had a steam whistle. It was blown every morning to wake the railway workers and station hands, and as the Tiflis station stood on a hill, this whistle was heard almost all over the town, and woke up not only the railway workers, but the inhabitants of the town of Tiflis itself. The Tiflis local government, as I recall it, even entered into correspondence with the railway authorities about the disturbance of the morning sleep of the peaceful citizens. To release the steam into the whistle every morning was the job of this same Carapet, who was employed in the station. So when he would come in the morning to the rope with which he released the steam for the whistle, he would, before taking hold of the rope and pulling it, wave his hand in all directions and solemnly, like a Mohammedan mullah from a minaret, loudly cry, "Your mother is a, your father is a, your grandfather is more than a, may your eyes, ears, nose, spleen, liver, corns," and so on. In short, he pronounced in various keys all the curses he knew, and not until he had done so would he pull the rope. When I heard about this Carapet, and of this practice of his, I visited him one evening after the day's work, with a small burdock of wine, and after performing this indispensable local solemn toasting ritual, I asked him, of course in a suitable form and also according to the local complex of amenities established for mutual relationship, why he did this. Having emptied his glass at a draught, and having once sung the famous Georgian song, Little Did We Tipple, inevitably sung when drinking, he leisurely began to answer as follows. As you drink wine not as people do today, that is to say, not merely for appearances, but in fact honestly, then this already shows me that you do not wish to know about this practice of mine out of curiosity, like our engineers and technicians, but really owing to your desire for knowledge, and therefore I wish, and even consider it my duty, sincerely to confess to you the exact reason of these inner, so to say, scrupulous considerations of mine, which led me to this, and which little by little instilled in me such a habit. He then related the following. Formerly I used to work in this station at night cleaning the steam boilers, but when this steam whistle was brought here, the station master, evidently considering my age and incapacity for the heavy work I was doing, ordered me to occupy myself only with releasing the steam into the whistle, for which I had to arrive punctually every morning and evening. The first week of this new service, I once noticed that after performing this duty of mine, I felt for an hour or two vaguely ill at ease. But when this strange feeling, increasing day by day, ultimately became a definite instinctive uneasiness, from which even my appetite for machoc disappeared, I began from then on always to think and think in order to find out the cause of this. I thought about it all particularly intensely for some reason or other while going to and coming from my work, but however hard I tried, I could make nothing whatsoever, even approximately, clear to myself. It thus continued for almost 2 years, and finally, when the calluses on my palms had become quite hard from the rope of the steam whistle, I quite accidentally and suddenly understood why I experienced this uneasiness. The shock for my correct understanding, as a result of which there was formed in me concerning this an unshakable conviction, was a certain exclamation I accidentally heard under the following rather peculiar circumstances. One morning, when I had not had enough sleep, having spent the first half of the night at the christening of my neighbour's 9th daughter, and the other half in reading a very interesting and rare book I had by chance obtained, and which was entitled Dreams and Witchcraft, as I was hurrying on my way to release the steam, I suddenly saw at the corner a barber surgeon I knew, belonging to the local government service, who beckoned me to stop. The duty of this barber surgeon friend of mine consisted in going at a certain time through the town, accompanied by an assistant, with a specially constructed carriage, and seizing all the stray dogs whose collars were without the metal plates distributed by the local authorities on payment of the tax, and taking these dogs to the municipal slaughterhouse, where they were kept for 2 weeks at municipal expense, feeding on the slaughterhouse offal. If, on the expiration of this period, the owners of the dogs had not claimed them and paid the established tax, then these dogs were, with a certain solemnity, driven down a certain passageway, which led directly to a specially built oven. After a short time, from the other end of this famous salutary oven there flowed, with a delightful gurgling sound, a definite quantity of pellucid and ideally clean fat, to the profit of the fathers of our town, for the manufacture of soap, and also perhaps of something else, and with a purling sound, no less delightful to the ear, There poured out also a fair quantity of very useful substance for fertilizing. This barber surgeon friend of mine proceeded in the following simple and admirably skilful manner to catch the dogs. He somewhere obtained a large, old and ordinary fishing net, which, during these peculiar excursions of his for the general human welfare through the slums of our town, he carried, arranged in a suitable manner on his strong shoulders, and when a dog without its passport came within the sphere of his all-seeing and, for all the canine species, terrible eye, he without haste, and with the softness of a panther, would steal up closely to it, and seizing a favourable moment when the dog was interested and attracted by something it noticed, cast his net on it and quickly entangled it, and later, rolling up the carriage, he disentangled the dog in such a way that it found itself in the cage attached to the carriage. Just when my friend the barber surgeon beckoned me to stop, he was aiming to throw his net, at the opportune moment, at his next victim, which at that moment was standing wagging his tail and looking at a bitch. My friend was just about to throw his net, when suddenly the bells of a neighbouring church rang out, calling the people to early morning prayers. At such an unexpected ringing in the morning quiet, the dog took fright, and springing aside, flew off like a shot down the empty street at his full canine velocity. Then the barber surgeon, so infuriated by this that his hair, even beneath his armpits, stood on end, flung his net on the pavement, and spitting over his left shoulder, loudly exclaimed, "Oh, hell! What a time to ring!" As soon as the exclamation of the barber surgeon reached my reflecting apparatus, there began to swarm in it various thoughts which ultimately led, in my view, to the correct understanding of just why there proceeded in me the aforesaid instinctive uneasiness. The first moment after I had understood this, there even arose a feeling of being offended at myself that such a simple and clear thought had not entered my head before. I sensed with the whole of my being that my effect on the general life could produce no other result than that process which had all along proceeded in me. And indeed, everyone awakened by the noise I make with the steam whistle, which disturbs his sweet morning slumbers, must without doubt curse me by everything under the sun, just me, the cause of this hellish row, and thanks to this there must of course certainly flow towards my person from all directions vibrations of all kinds of malice. On that significant morning when, after performing my duties, I, in my customary mood of depression, was sitting in a neighbouring dukhan and eating hashi with garlic, I, continuing to ponder, came to the conclusion that if I should curse beforehand all those to whom my service for the benefit of certain among them might seem disturbing, then, according to the explanation of the book I had read the night before, however much all those, as they might be called, who lie in the sphere of idiocy, that is, between sleep and drowsiness, might curse me, it would have, as explained in that same book, no effect on me at all. And in fact, since I began to do so, I no longer feel the instinctive uneasiness. Well now, patient reader, I must really conclude this opening chapter. It has now only to be signed. He who... Stop! Misunderstanding formation. With a signature there must be no joking, otherwise the same will be done to you as once before in one of the empires of Central Europe, when you were made to pay 10 years' rent for a house you occupied only for 3 months, merely because you had set your hand to a paper undertaking to renew the contract for the house each year. Of course, after this, and still other instances from life experience, I must in any case, in respect of my own signature, be very, very careful. Very well then. He who in childhood was called Tatach, in early youth, Darky, later, the Black Greek, in middle age, the Tiger of Turkestan, and now, not just anybody, but the genuine Monsieur or Mr. Gurdjieff, or the nephew of Prince Makransky, or finally, simply a teacher of dancing.